Hello there, very good evening and welcome to the news tonight here on Sabha TV. I'm Tracy Shilshi and in the next 30 minutes I'll be getting you the day's top stories. Our eye of course remains on Kashmir, also getting you all the details from the ASEAN summit. But first, the headlines. All-party delegation meets in Delhi to discuss future plans for Jammu and Kashmir. Army chief to review security situation in the state as 4 people are injured in fresh clashes in Anantnag district. Prime Minister Narendra Modi reaches Vientiane for the 14th ASEAN-India Summit, meets Japanese Premier Shinzo Abe as the first of the several bilateral meetings scheduled on the sidelines of the summit. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley says procedural formalities on ratifying the goods and services tax regime are in full swing, calls the April 1st implementation target a stiff one but worth a try. And Karnataka finally obeys the Supreme Court's order, starts releasing 10,000 cusecs of Kaveri water to Tamil Nadu per day. State government to approach the Supreme Court to modify the directive though. Our top story, the all-party delegation which visited Jammu and Kashmir this week has once again appealed for calm in the state. The delegation has asked the centre and the state governments to take steps to initiate a dialogue with all stakeholders, asserted that there can be no compromises on the issue of national sovereignty.
The members of the delegation are of the opinion that there is no place for violence in a civilized society and that there can be at the same time no compromise on the issue of national sovereignty.
2 days after its return from Jammu and Kashmir, the all-party delegation once again appealed for an end to the cycle of violence in the state. Taking stock of its interactions with various sections during its 2-day visit, delegation members reiterated the need to resolve all issues through dialogue and discussion. It has also asked the government to undertake some confidence-building measures.
इस समस्या को हल करने के लिए एक ड्यूअल ट्रैक अप्रोच अपनाना चाहिए. एक ट्रैक है आपको सबसे पहले लोगों के अंदर कॉन्फिडेंस जताने के लिए, उनके अंदर जो अलगाव का जो फीलिंग जो बढ़ा हुआ है उसको कम करने के लिए कॉन्फिडेंस बिल्डिंग मेजर्स आप लागू करिए.
जब तक वैली में जो पॉलिटिकली अपना एक शक्ति रखते हैं, कुवत रखते हैं, बगैर उनको पूछे या बगैर सलाह उनका लिए आगे बढ़ना भी बड़ा मुश्किल होगा.
स्थिति को सामान्य करने के लिए मूल भूमिका प्रांतीय सरकार का है और हमारा आशा है कि हम देखेंगे कि वो जो कदम उठाए उससे समस्या हल होगा, थोड़ा स्थिति सामान्य होगा. केंद्रीय सरकार का काम होगा प्रांतीय सरकार को मदद करना.
The delegation also requested the government to take effective steps to ensure security for all citizens and provide medical treatment to citizens and security personnel injured in the agitation. Vishal Daya's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, fresh clashes broke out in North and South Kashmir today, even as normal life remained disrupted for the 61st day in a row due to the ongoing curfew. In Anantnag district, 4 people were injured in an attack between protesters and security forces. Elsewhere, 3 soldiers were injured, in fact, in an attack on an army convoy in Kralgund area of Kupwara district. Here are the details.
At least 4 people were injured in fresh clashes with security forces in South Kashmir's Anantnag district on Wednesday. According to sources, a violent clash broke out when security forces tried to stop a protest rally in the district. In another incident, 3 army jawans were injured in a militant attack on an army convoy in North Kashmir's Kupwara district. The incident took place when some militants indiscriminately opened fire on the convoy that was heading towards Handwara district. The group immediately fled the scene. Security forces cordoned off the area. Search operations are on to nab the militants. Meanwhile, normal life remained affected in the valley as curfew was reinforced in parts of Srinagar. Restrictions on the assembly of people also remained in force to maintain law and order.
ये लगातार चल रहा है कि आर्मी पे हमले हो रहे हैं, क्रॉस बॉर्डर फायरिंग हो रही है, पठानकोट पे हमला हो रहा, कश्मीर में आतंकवाद भयानक बढ़ रहा है। तो ये तो बहुत बुरा हाल है। आज 64 दिन हो गए कर्फ्यू लगे हुए, तो हालात बहुत खराब है, सरकार संभाल नहीं पा रही है। इसलिए सिर्फ बातें हैं, भाषण हैं, और भाषण और बातों से जो इस सरकार के मंत्री करते हैं, कुछ नहीं होना जाना।
The Hurriyat conference said the tough steps being mulled by the centre against separatist leaders is an attempt to mislead people. He asked the centre to come out with details of the favours extended by it. On Tuesday, the centre issued a statement announcing that it was considering a cut in the funds spent on separatists.
सरकार वही कार्रवाई करेगी जो राष्ट्र हित में होगा। किसी का नाम लेने की आवश्यकता नहीं है। सरकार कार्रवाई किसी के खिलाफ भी करेगा तो देश हित में करेगा।
BJP PDP alliance, they committed in writing in their 11-page document of agenda for alliance to talk with all people irrespective of their political ideologies, all stakeholders in Jammu Kashmir, which includes the Hurriyat. That was the PDP demand, but they never allowed the government to act on it.
Indian government, Indian democracy, Indian civilization has survived only through the art of listening and conversation. And I would rather advise them to think twice before going for these kind of reaction, which is fundamentally knee-jerk and which is not going to help the cause in the valley as far as restoration of normalcy is.
75 civilians have been killed so far and more than 10,000 have been injured in the ongoing unrest over the killing of separatist militant Burhan Wani in July. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And India on Wednesday summoned Pakistan High Commissioner Abdul Basit to lodge a strong protest over the discourtesy shown to India's envoy to Pakistan, Gautam Bambavle. Bambavle was in fact scheduled to speak at an event and was in fact cancelled in the last minute. He had received an invite for the event a couple of weeks ago. Bambavle was also told about the cancellation just half an hour before the event. The organisers did not give a reason for the cancellation. Meanwhile, describing Kashmir as Pakistan's lifeline, Army Chief General Rahil Sharif has said that Islamabad will continue to support the people of Kashmir on diplomatic and ethical fronts.
इस जिदोजहद का असल हल निहत्थे कश्मीरी अवाम पर गोलियों की बारिश करने में नहीं, बल्कि अवाम की आवाज सुनने और उनकी उमंगों का एहतराम करने में है। कश्मीर के मसले का हल UN resolutions पर अमल करने से ही मुमकिन है।
In other news, the ASEAN leaders held talks with the international dialogue partners on the second day of the summit. South China Sea dispute and security threat posed by North Korea were the highlights of the discussion. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Laos' capital Vientiane to attend the 14th ASEAN-India summit. Modi in fact, did meet his Japanese counterpart Shinzo Abe on the sidelines of the summit.
On the second day of the ASEAN summit, the 10-nation bloc held talks with international dialogue partners. The South China Sea territorial dispute topped the agenda, with ASEAN leaders urging China to follow international laws in resolving the dispute. The meeting came hours after Philippines released pictures of what it said were Chinese boats near a disputed shoal in the region.
The issue of the South China Sea was mentioned during the ASEAN-China dialogue just earlier, but what was underlined by countries like Singapore, the Philippines, was the importance of the rule of law and adhering to international bodies that govern this.
However, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang told leaders that shouldn't overshadow the main relations between the regional bloc. The two sides agreed to resolve the territorial and jurisdictional disputes by peaceful means.
始终视东盟为维护地区和平稳定、促进区域一体化和世界多极化发展的重要力量。
The security threat posed by North Korea was also raised at the summit. Japan and South Korea asked leaders to stand as one to counter it. North Korea had provoked earlier this week by firing 3 ballistic missiles into the sea.
戦のミサイル能力は地域の安全保障に対する深刻な脅威であります。北朝鮮の相次ぐ挑発行動に対し、国際社会は断固たる対応を取るべきであり、安保理手続きの厳格な履行等を通じ、 圧力を強化すべきであります。
United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon addressed the summit and urged member countries to ratify the Paris Agreement. The two world's biggest economies, United States and China, had ratified the agreement earlier at the G20 summit.
We need the 28 more countries ratify and accounting for a further 16% of greenhouse gas emissions to bring this agreement into force.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi also arrived in Vientiane to attend the 14th ASEAN-India Summit and the 11th East Asia Summit. Prime Minister met his Japanese counterpart Shinzo Abe and discussed ways to strengthen strategic bilateral ties. Modi will also meet counterparts from the 10 ASEAN countries and hold bilateral talks with leaders of South Korea and Myanmar. Issues such as maritime security, terrorism, economic and socio-cultural cooperation will be on the agenda of the talks. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Finance Minister Arun Jaitley said that the government is running against time for the implementation of GST by its deadline of the 1st of April 2017. Jaitley has said that the formalities of collecting proceedings of all the states and sending it to the President for ratification are on. The Constitution Amendment Bill will be notified once the President gives his assent, and any pending issues regarding the bill will be resolved by the Council. Jaitley also added that the passage of central laws, IGST and GST Bill, are among the important economic legislations for the government during the winter session.
Central legislature will also have to pass two important laws in relation to the GST itself and the interstate GST bill itself. I think these are amongst the important economic legislations. But more important, along with these legislations, I think, if you ask me in terms of economic priorities even outside Parliament, I would say that certainly implementation of the GST is the top priority.
Meanwhile, here's what's creating a buzz this evening. The Indian Railways will introduce a flexi fare system for premium trains like Rajdhani, Shatabdi and Duronto. Changes in fares will come into force from the 9th of September. This, however, won't apply to tickets that have already been issued in advance for journeys to commence on or after that date. Under the new system, base fares will increase by 10% with every 10% of berths sold, subject to a prescribed ceiling limit. Other supplementary charges like catering charges, reservations, service tax, superfast charges will be levied separately based on applicability. There will be no change in the existing fare, though, for 1AC and EC class of travel.
इंडियन रेलवेज ने वही कॉन्सेप्ट जो वेरिएबल फेयर का कॉन्सेप्ट है जो कि एयरलाइंस वगैरह में भी होता है और हम भी भारतीय रेल के ऊपर इसको पहले से एक्सपेरिमेंट कर चुके हैं। सुविधा पैटर्न की जो हमारी गाड़ियां चलती हैं उनमें भी एक डायनामिक फेयर सिस्टम है। उसी तरह से जो हमारी स्पेशल ट्रेनें हैं उसमें 30% एक्स्ट्रा के ऊपर भी हमारा एक सिस्टम है। जो हमने गतिमान ट्रेन चलाई है उसमें हमारा डिफरेंट फेयर है।
Now, the backlash of the Apex Court's directive on Kaveri water sharing was felt in Karnataka for the second consecutive day on Wednesday. Protests were held in several districts, including the state capital, Bengaluru. Farmers have warned of severe agitations if the release of Kaveri water to Tamil Nadu isn't stopped. This after Karnataka began releasing 10,000 cusecs of water to neighbouring Tamil Nadu late on Tuesday night, a move that has intensified the ongoing protests.
Protests intensified in Karnataka on Wednesday, hours after the state released 10,000 cusecs of Kaveri water to Tamil Nadu. Agitated farmers blocked major roads and highways for the second straight day. Schools and colleges were also forced to shut down. In Mandya, a farmer tried to attempt suicide against the release of Kaveri water to Tamil Nadu. Authorities rushed him to the hospital in time and he was saved. A massive protest was also organized in the state capital Bengaluru, where protesters burnt effigies of Chief Minister Siddaramaiah and his Tamil Nadu counterpart J. Jayalalitha.
ಸುಪ್ರೀಂ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಜಡ್ಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅವೈಜ್ಞಾನಿಕವಾಗಿಂದ ಕೂಡಿದೆ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಅದರ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಮೊದಲು ಹೋರಾಟ. ಎರಡನೇದು ತಮಿಳುನಾಡು ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಭ್ರಷ್ಟ ಡಿಕ್ಟೇಟರ್ಶಿಪ್ ಏನಿದೆ, ಸರ್ವಾಧಿಕಾರ.
ಅವ್ರ ಬೆಳೆಗೆ ನೀರಿಲ್ಲ, ಸಿದ್ದರಾಮಯ್ಯ ನಮ್ಮ ರೈತರಿಗೆ ನೀರಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಬಿಡಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು, ಕುಡಿಯಕ್ಕೆ ನೀರಿಲ್ಲ ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ರೈತರಿಗೆ ನೀರು ಬಿಡಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ತಮಿಳುನಾಡು ಸರ್ಕಾರಕ್ಕೆ ನೀರು ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಅದು ಖಂಡನೆ ಮಾಡಿ.
Political parties also called for a shutdown in the state. Opposition leaders accused the government of not representing its case efficiently in the court.
अपना स्टेट का फार्मर्स को जस्टिस मिलना चाहिए, उसका बारे में अपना सरकार भी सोचना चाहिए। आजकल बहुत नेग्लिजेंस से आज क्या ये लोग ऐसा कर रहे हैं, इसको अपन खंडन नहीं, ये तो नहीं होना चाहिए।
Main problem is that there are lots of shortcomings in the tribunal award, the Kaveri Water Tribunal Award. Until those shortcomings are going to be removed, this problem is not going to be settled. So that is the major demand of the people of Karnataka, and I hope the Honorable Supreme Court will hear it.
On Tuesday night, Karnataka released 10,000 cusecs of Kaveri water to Tamil Nadu following the Supreme Court's directive. The state government, however, has decided to approach the apex court with a modification petition explaining its difficulties in implementing the order. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
With a quick break here, we'll be back with the international news in a bit. Stay with us.
Down the ages, jewellery has been the pride of the Indian culture. In the Harappan period, it attained perfection in flattened gold bands. From the Mauryan period came the exquisite gold brooches. Many ornaments were an extension of religious practices, like the Gauri Shankaram Rudraksh necklace worn by the temple priest. Rings with lids preserved the taweez that held secret messages and sometimes even poison.
Welcome back. Let's get you some more news. In fact, international and the US presidential campaigners shifted their gears this week, turning their focus on national security. Both Democrat Hillary Clinton and Republican Donald Trump claimed that they were the fittest candidates to take on the Islamic State and tackle the question of the refugees fleeing the Middle East.
The US presidential campaign's focus has shifted to national security. On Tuesday, Democrat Hillary Clinton claimed she was the candidate to take on the Islamic State, while Republican Donald Trump pledged to help female veterans and deal with both Islamic State and the flood of refugees leaving Middle East.
This November, the American people have a big choice to make when it comes to national security. On the one hand, we have Donald Trump, who has called the American military a disaster, who disrespects our military leaders by saying, and I quote, "I know more about ISIS than the generals do."
We are going to solve the ISIS problem, but we have to also get back, and we have to solve it big league and strongly and swiftly. But we have to get back to rebuilding our country, because our country is going to hell.
Florida and Virginia are considered swing states that could play a pivotal role in the outcome of the November election. Both Clinton and Trump addressed military veteran supporters there.
When it comes to fighting ISIS, he has been all over the map. You would have to literally map it out. He's talked about letting Syria become a free zone for ISIS. Look at the map, Donald. He's talked about sending in American ground troops. Not on my watch. That is not what we are going to do.
They're in the process of doing some unbelievable things, believe me. I mean, they're very belligerent. They have no respect for our country, none whatsoever. And we have a situation that's a potential catastrophe. We have somebody that truly does have nuclear and nuclear capability.
Trump criticized the Obama administration's handling of North Korea and what he called their developing nuclear program.
We have who is, I mean, he's took over 25 years old, I guess, or around then, and now it looks like he's getting more and more hostile. And what I would do very simply is say, China, this is your baby, this is your problem, you solve the problem. China can solve that problem.
Trump also compared Hillary Clinton to German Chancellor Angela Merkel and her policy to admit refugees fleeing turmoil in the Middle East.
Look, she's a disaster in so many different ways, folks. Disaster. I don't really even think she believes it herself. You know, she was brought so far left. she was brought so far left by Bernie and the group, and I think we're going to get a lot of the Bernie people because of trade, if you want to know the truth. A lot of the Bernie people are coming with us.
The audience also saw a new television advertisement showing veterans and their families reacting to statements that Trump had made about national security. On Wednesday, Clinton and Trump will take part in a televised forum on national security sponsored by a veterans group. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
They make one of the third of the world's population, but more than half of them are refugees. We're talking about children who have been forced from their homes, torn by conflict, poverty, sometimes hunger. A UNICEF report says that there are 50 million children who are refugees, and almost half of these refugees in 2015 came from just two countries, Syria and Afghanistan. The UN Children's Body has now urged countries to take urgent steps to ensure the refugee children do not suffer anymore.
Uprooted from their homes by war, by violence, by persecution, almost 50 million children throughout the world are refugees. Each of these children represent millions of others like them who are in danger, trying to lead their lives with just one goal: to stay safe. The United Nations Children's Program, UNICEF, says in a report that while 1/3 of the world's population was made up by in 2015, they accounted for nearly half of all refugees, with the number having doubled over the last 10 years. UNICEF has urged countries to take steps to ensure that the children coming in as refugees do not suffer discrimination, marginalization, and further humiliation. UNICEF is expected to take up the issue of migration in two late September meetings on the sidelines of this year's UN General Assembly. The UN body says its report is a sad and sobering wake-up call, with the number of child refugees more than doubling in the last decade. That means 1 in every 200 children globally is a refugee. Roughly 17 million of these children are displaced within their own countries, lacking access to humanitarian aid and critical services. Children are also increasingly forced to cross borders on their own. The report states that more than 1 lakh unaccompanied minors applied for asylum in 78 countries last year, triple the number from 2014. Unaccompanied children are among those at the highest risk of exploitation and abuse, including by smugglers and traffickers. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now let's get you more international news updates in Global Buzz. The Islamic State group has reportedly issued an order banning burqas at security checkpoints in the city of Mosul in Iraq. Recent killings of Islamic State commanders by veiled women have forced the terror group to make an exception to its strict dress codes for women. Hungarian prosecutors on Wednesday filed charges against a camera woman accused of kicking and tripping migrants who were fleeing police near the southern border with Serbia last year. Petra Laszlo was fired from her job after video footage spread online appearing to show her kicking a girl and a man. Her prosecution for disorderly conduct comes as political tensions mount over Europe's migration crisis in the region. Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull called the threat of a terror attack in Australia real after the so-called Islamic State group urged followers to target Sydney's beachside Bondi and the Melbourne cricket ground. In relation to the so-called lone wolf attackers, Turnbull said that some individuals could be radicalized very quickly and engage in very destructive, lethal conduct. Kyrgyz authorities have identified the organizers of the terrorist attack on the Chinese embassy in the capital Bishkek last week. Kyrgyzstan says that the attack was organized by Uyghur terrorist groups active in Syria. The suicide bomber was a member of the terrorist organization East Turkestan Islamic Movement. The car bomb attack killed the lone assailant and injured 5 security personnel and staff members. In Syria, government forces have been accused of using a helicopter to drop 2 barrel bombs loaded with chlorine gas on residents in the eastern city of Aleppo. According to the Syrian Civil Defense Group, around 80 people suffocated in the attack. However, no deaths have been reported so far. The Syrian government has denied any involvement, though. All right, let's turn focus to sports. And in tennis, India's campaign at the US Open came to an end after Sania Mirza and her doubles partner, Barbara Strykova, lost in the women's doubles quarterfinals. The Indo-Czech pair blew away a 5-2 lead in the first set before losing 6-7, 1-6 to top seeds Caroline Garcia and Kristina Mladenovic. In the men's singles, top seed Novak Djokovic reached his 10th successive consecutive US Open semi-final after his opponent Jo-Wilfried Tsonga retired at the start of the third set. The world number 1 was leading 6-3, 6-2 before the Frenchman retired. Djokovic will next face France's 10th-seeded Gaël Monfils, who beat compatriot Luca Pouille in straight sets. In the women's draw, second-seeded Angelique Kerber brought an end to Roberta Vinci's run with a clinical 7-5, 6-love win. Last year, finalist Vinci broke the Kerber serve 3 times in the first set, but allowed the German to break back immediately and take the set. Kerber then went on to take the second set without losing a game. Denmark's former world number 1, Caroline Wozniacki, also made it to the semi-finals with a 6-love, 6-2 win over Latvian Anastasia Sevastova. Wozniacki will now face Kerber in the last 4 for a place in Saturday's final. And here are more updates from the world of sports in Sports Beat. The International Cricket Council withdrew its contentious proposal of having a 2-tier test system following vehement opposition from India's cricket governing body, BCCI. Sri Lanka, Zimbabwe and Bangladesh also opposed the system. Any structural change to be passed by the ICC needs a clear 2/3 majority, and it would have been difficult to pass this proposal as it required 7 out of 10 votes. Switzerland stunned Euro 2016 champions Portugal 2-0 in a World Cup qualifier. Breel Embolo headed Switzerland ahead in the 23rd minute before Admir Mehmedi doubled the lead 6 minutes later to hand Portugal their first competitive defeat in 2 years. In another game, Euro 2016 runners-up France were held to a 0-all draw by Belarus. Formula One boss Bernie Ecclestone will stay on for 3 years after an imminent takeover of the sport by the US cable TV mogul John Maloney's Liberty Media. The 85-year-old who has been credited with building the sport into a business with an annual turnover of nearly $2 billion, said that he was asked to stay on by the media house. That's all we have for you on the news tonight from the entire team here. Good night.